Hey, our wonderful people, welcome back to Waking Up Solutionary TV with Dr. Tatiana. This is such a fun and exciting night, and we are staying right on point with disclosure, but with a little bit of a twist. Don't you love it when the universe lines it up? That you come back from two epic conferences and find yourself back in your hometown, and the first person that you meet is someone that was at the conference with you and happens to be right in the heart and the soul of the visionary and the artistic rendering that is becoming the art of disclosure. I have a really great guest tonight. I'm excited to have him here. His name is Stephen Cefalo. Help me welcome him now. Stephen, hey, thanks for being here.
So great to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got to share how fun it was that this all came together. You come back from this epic conference, I come back from the conference, and you're looking for community. You just moved down from New York a while back. You've been an amazing traditional oil painting artist doing portraits, and being in the space of probably, I don't know how many months to years of studying disclosure, you find yourself at a conference like this, and already you are doing this amazing rendering for Corey Goode and Sphere being aligned. You've got to tell our audience about this. This is a thrill.
Absolutely. Where do you want me to start?
All right, so let's just migrate you from New York down to North Carolina,
Okay.
and when your journey into disclosure began.
Sure. Okay. So I was working as an artist I was working as a studio assistant for a pop artist, many of you will know, called Jeff Koons in New York City. And you had to work long hours on these paintings. And I was naturally, as I was pulling all-nighters, I had to find a way to stay awake. And so I started listening to the most wild podcasts I could possibly find. And at first I was kind of listening for fun and even sometimes chuckling at some of it and not taking it too seriously. But so I listened to a few things, and then as they say, I started going down the rabbit hole, and I started realizing some of these people, when I discovered the whistleblower testimonies, then I started realizing this is not a joke. This stuff is real, and I started. I eventually realized I have to get Gaia TV, and
Of course, that's a rite of passage,
that's
isn't it,
right.
Steve? Yeah.
And I started following David Wilcock, of course, and then by the time I discovered this Corey Goode story, I was just completely. I knew I had to get involved some way.
Okay, so how did you find yourself then being in a position to be submitting your artwork as you were data downloading some of
Mhm.
these amazing stories and developing imagery around what Corey has experienced with, some of these off-world beings and some of the inner world beings? I mean, there were many artists that were trying to submit some of their visualizations of, these pretty much challenging to describe beings that are not something that we had a context for, particularly as we were talking about, raw tier air,
Mhm.
blue sphere, blue beings were a completely new idea, bird-like beings, and really more humanoid than anything else. So how do you find yourself going from, I really think there's something to this. This is not a conspiracy theory. There's context here to I can envision it in my mind. I can embody it in my own creative expression, and you found yourself self-submitting things. How did that happen?
That's right. Well, I'm trained traditionally as a fine artist and as an illustrator. So, but my training is very broad. All the way back in the late '90s and the early 2000s, I was a Rugrats artist for Nickelodeon. I've done everything, but I'm mostly trained in classical oil painting techniques, and I think that gave me a certain versatility and a certain believability that allowed me to breathe personality, to know when I sort of reach that point where the character's looking back at you. And I think that's the side that I presented to Corey and Roger that they responded to. Even though I didn't get Rotier quite right at first, uh, they did feel his personality, his soul looking at the viewer, and
Mhm.
that sort of impressed them.
Well, and so let's talk about this. For those of you that have been following Disclosure and you have been following a lot of the artwork as it is kind of come out through Cosmic Disclosure and some of the conferences that David and Corey have had going. A lot of you have seen it progress. You've maybe seen, raw tier air change a little bit. You may have seen uh, Ari, right?
That's right.
Not
Not
Kari. We got to
Kari.
get that name right. For those of you that think you're downloading stuff, you're not. There were tricky messages and ways of reiterating who's actually getting their own personal experience, but they needed to morph and they needed to nuance, and it needed to also give us an opportunity, those of us that have been contactees in our own regard, the opportunity to not have the visual so completely scripted for us that we knew when we had actually had an experience, it could be corroborated externally at a later date. And so Stephen was good enough to bring in a comic. It is The Return of the Guardians, and he's got it here. I want him to hold it up for all of you to see because it's
That's
pretty
right.
phenomenal.
And I want to tell you this. The title on this is changing. This is the first edition of this is the first run of our 24-page comic.
That's
Put
right.
that on the screen there.
All right.
And it is entitled Return of the Guardians. The title is going to change, but the second edition we've gone through, and this was only released for people who went to Contact in the Desert. So we made lots and lots of revisions. We're still making revisions as of today on the 24-page, and it will be called Sphere Being Alliance. Return of the Guardians will be the title of a later released graphic novel.
Okay, so I'm excited for you to tell our audience who's featured in it. Maybe go ahead and hold it up a little bit and tell them who is actually featured on the front cover.
Sure. And this is actually, I would like to give you this copy of the first edition.
Wow. Now that's a perk for me because I did not make it to Contact in the Desert. I have to choose my conferences carefully. So that's a super big honor. Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome. And so, okay, who do we have? We have Corey in the center there.
Yep.
And we have a Mayan. And Corey said he gave me very specific details about how to draw each character, but he said that the Mayan I got the closest.
Awesome.
I did.
Feedback.
By the way, I used a lot of Vashta Narada for reference, so I want to give her
shout out to Vashta.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, very talented artist as well.
And the one that people will be most kind of confused by is my representation of raw tier air throughout this series.
We'll tell them about that, Stephen, because there's a story there.
Sure. So most people are familiar with the Android Jones. The raw tier air that you see everywhere is the Android Jones version of raw tier air.
More bird-like, isn't it, Stephen?
Yes. And the eyes are he has a beak. In the or somewhat of a beak in the Android Jones. So Corey was allowing Android Jones to be a little bit more intuitive about finding his way through raw tier air. But when I worked with Corey, we worked back and forth, and I was very it was very important to me to get tier air exactly like Corey saw him, and so we went back and forth and just fine-tuned the likeness until Corey said it was as close as anyone could get.
That's actually a very high compliment, isn't it?
That's a more full view on the back there.
That's a good up close.
You want to know who the rest of the characters?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep our people on point.
Oh yeah. What's this guy's name? You guys are gonna yell at me. Who's this guy here? What's that guy's name? I'm blanking out.
Oh, you know what? That's what happens when you're on camera. You can't remember everybody's name when you're on camera, but suffice to say, you've got Ari on there. It looks like it's also one of the Anshar that had been, I guess, expelled from the inner earth and had been coming and having some uninvited encounters with Corey. I can't remember her name up in the far corner as well. Mika.
Yeah, Mika.
Hey.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
I just
Points for you.
Really bad name recall at times. And then we have a Nordic woman who does not, which actually she does appear in the comic. We have Sigmund. And Corey also said that.
Is that Gonzalez? Is there a Shadow Gonzalez in there somewhere?
That's Sigmund, and this is left is right and right is that's Gonzalez, who we never quite see his face, kind of like the neighbor in Home Improvement.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
uh,
He's still incognito, though. I mean, that's kind of important, right?
right.
Love it.
And then we have Golden Triangle Head, of course, and
Yes,
that's his name.
because they don't have a more defining term for those beings. I
Right.
love it. All right, this is mine, and I cannot wait to take it home. Now, we were both at the conference, and one of the perks was that there was going to be a premiere of Beyond Majestic.
Hmm.
And I unfortunately had
Above Majestic,
above.
yes.
See, we're going to get everything perfect tonight.
We'll get
All
yelled
of you
at.
disclosure junkies, send us the comments. And we've opened up the phone line. So 919-518-9773. Those of you that would like to do a shout out for Stephen for his amazing art, you want to talk about some of the peaks and perks that were part of Dimensions and Disclosure that went on last month in Loveland, Colorado. Feel free to call in 919-518-9773. But let's talk a little bit about the conference and what that was like to be involved in. There was 3/4 of that attendance were brand new to conferences. Do you realize what a huge impact not only the information, the intel, the witness, the testimony, but also you being able to come forward and be able to paint such a magnificent visual for them so that they could really embody this storyline and be able to make it their own and put it in context for themselves. It was pretty phenomenal, wasn't it?
Yes, which conference are you talking
I'm
about in
talking,
particular?
so this was Contact of the Desert. I know you said that this was available. I am
Yes.
talking about Dimensions and Disclosure in Loveland.
Yeah, it was two very different conferences, but yeah, someone asked who in the audience is this their first conference, and wow, it felt like, what was it, 80 or 90% of
It was.
people raised their hands.
We've actually got a caller, and who is with us? Can you tell us who we're welcoming onto the show? All right, this is Dr. Tatiana and Stephen Cefalo. Who's joining us tonight?
Hi, this is Joy Jackson.
Joy, I love that you decided to join us tonight. We are so thrilled and honored to have you. Let's have you tell us what's going on your end, lovely. You are definitely an expert on so many levels in supporting Sphere Being Alliance, Meet Earth's Cosmic Neighbors, and doing the due diligence to keep people informed. Tell us what you would like to share with us tonight.
Well, oh goodness, I've been just enjoying listening to your conversation so far. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Stephen in person yet, which I'm very excited to hear his story because I haven't had that opportunity myself. And I'm just so excited. I know we've all been very excited for the comic book that's come out. For those that haven't had a chance to see it yet, I know it's going to do very well in our community. Mm-hmm. But I did have a question for Stephen, if it's an appropriate time to ask.
Absolutely.
That I've been kind of wondering, just but haven't really had the opportunity. Since since you began working with Corey and the Sphere Being Alliance team, and I was curious, did you have any personal experiences as a result of your work on this comic book? Because I know that sometimes when we get engaged in projects like this, they can kind of spur some interesting things.
Yeah.
As far as
Yes, I have, and it's I would say some of them positive and some of them negative. I believe that I have a certain protection, and I don't let fear really take hold when odd things happen. Usually, we had I don't know how much how much I should get into these experiences, but yes, I have very bizarre things.
Yeah.
From visits at nighttime, when things that wake me up and things that are that seem to be looking at me or touching me, sleep paralysis. And I didn't have these were not things in my life before I started working on this project. That, and also people around me who seem to be picking up on these energies, and to be short, kind of stalking loved ones, but that's discontinued. I kind of did some
Wow.
things to take care of
Good.
that,
Wow.
peaceful things.
So, Joy, that's kind of along the lines of the potential of negative greeting, yes?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
But with such a powerful creation that Stephen's bringing in, um, yeah, I would imagine that just kind of comes with the territory. But at the same time, it sounds like the guardians are surrounding you. So,
Mhm.
Hmm.
I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I realize there may be only to a certain extent that it's appropriate to share with us. But
Mhm.
yeah, I was just kind of wondering that, because I know since I began on my journey with just the disclosure community in general, that's of course catalyzed some things. So I appreciate you sharing your experience as a result of that.
That's a great question. I'm such a fan of your Star Trek analysis series.
Oh, oh, thank you.
Yeah, Joy, you are
No,
an
I
expert in your
appreciate
own
that.
right. Thank you so much for calling in with the question, because it really does bear out that when you step out into a space of becoming a more public person and being part of a movement that is going to create some tumultuosity and some change making in the current establishment and the powers that be, you can run into interference, right? I mean, that's something that we realize
Mhm.
is a potential, and a lot of others have thrown out that forewarning, not to be overly paranoid, but there is some foreboding if you are going to run interference with what the current mainstream narrative happens to be, and you're going to wake a lot of people up that have been useful unconscious servants of the establishment, then you might find that you get some attention. So it's an important question, and it's one that we drive a lot of courage and positivity into, so that we can stay on task with our message, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for calling
Absolutely.
in with that. And I want to just say real quick, why is it so important, Stephen, that we have the art and the entertainment piece with disclosure? What are your thoughts on that? Because
Yeah.
some of the message isn't pretty. Some of the message is that the world and even the cosmos is less safe than what we might have wanted it to be. Then
Hmm.
again, it's also beautiful and benevolent and evolutionary. But what is your take on why it's so important that we be able to put this into a context where it is visually beautiful and it's enticing, and it also marries into entertainment?
Right. I think there are some people who are concerned that comic books. I think the word comic makes people uneasy because it gives the impression that I'm making something too fun out of it or something. And there is some levity that comes with entertainment, and I think that it makes it palatable. It makes it something that people can connect with emotionally.
Mhm.
And I think that's the strength of art and entertainment, is that emotional connection. You're connecting with these characters, and it makes it some. For me, I am not the researcher type so much that wants things, the dry information. I want things to be kind of. I want to see the faces and the personalities
Mhm.
of the characters.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
It makes it personal, doesn't
that's
it?
right. Yeah.
Mhm. And so when we're talking about disclosure and all that that encompasses, I mean, when you come to a conference like this one, you are currently focusing on something that is taking the best of your talents. It's probably taking it into a realm that you've wanted to enjoy more in terms of it looks more like a comic. You're brilliant when it comes to doing portraits. I mean, that's Corey. I've seen Corey a handful of times, and that's most certainly Corey. But this is an opportunity to be marrying your art and your talents and your academic prowess with your passions and what
Hmm.
you are excited about making your purpose in the world. And you've created the local meetup so that you can start gathering local community, as well as being part of this larger convention, conference, and global platform. A quick shout out to the meetup group for Raleigh, North Carolina, that Stephen has
Yes.
founded, We're excited that many of you RSVP'd to watch this and joined us tonight. He is doing really profound work, and we're lucky to have Stephen because he is at the cutting edge as one of the commissioned artists for Spearwing Alliance to know really what's going on in terms of regular intel drops and some of the information that makes this much more personal. So I'm honored to have him here and want to ask a couple of questions around what is your goal with working with Spearwing Alliance? Do you have a personal driving force around what you would like to be able to empower this entertainment and this education piece to arrive at or
I really
manifest?
think that I'm just a servant to the message, and I feel like it is my greatest desire in all of these projects to get Corey's vision down on paper. I don't want to turn it into my project and my characters.
Mhm.
This is of course I'm bringing my own flair. Like I'm making it as exciting visually and experientially as I possibly can.
Mhm.
But I don't feel like I have my own agenda. It's all about getting the message out.
So what's the most exciting part then? What is the most exciting part right now? Because you're on the cusp of a very big project. Folks, we're lucky to have him here tonight because he has got a lot of deadlines with some pages of art that he needs to be able to have refined and perfected and submitted. So let's talk about what you're working on right now and what we have to look forward to.
Okay. So many things. uh, so one project that we recently wrapped up was I guess none of them are side projects. These are very, very big deal projects. So I just did the artwork for the poster for Above Majestic, which is to be also released on Halloween. And the 24-page comic was honestly, it was somewhat of a test run, kind of a prelude to the graphic novel series. A lot of people are flipping out on the comic like it is the big deal, but the graphic novel is the big deal. And so the first it's going to be a trilogy. We the first is a trilogy of 375-page graphic novels. The first one to be released on Halloween. We're going to have a release party too for people who have pre-ordered the first graphic novel. It'll be in Boulder, I believe. It'll be a costume party.
Oh, really? Now that sounds
Uh-huh.
like something we don't want to miss, doesn't it?
That's right. I
That
hope
sounds like a
you're all
blast.
there.
And that's where most of those that are involved in former Cosmic Disclosure through Gaia, Emery Smith, the David Wilcock, and Corey Good and their families are all in the Boulder, or at least in that northern Colorado area at this point, aren't they?
That's right.
Yeah, so we know where to go for the parties and the
Mhm.
conferences, folks. So I wanted to be really clear that the shout out to the Meetout group is Disclosure Now. And
Full disclosure now,
Full Disclosure Now,
Raleigh. So
Raleigh.
kind of taking that Rogers group on Facebook, Full Disclosure Now, and I like that sentiment, and I just put Raleigh on it.
So, Stephen, let's talk about why it's so important that we be building microcosmic community where we are.
Yes.
You needed it too, so let's go there.
Yeah. So I started going to these conferences. I've only been to two. I went to Contact in the Desert, and then I went to Dimensions of Disclosure, and I made so many good connections. And I came back home like many people do from these conferences, and you just feel like, oh, here I go back to the real world, and everybody's thinking, well, where's my tribe back home?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a hunch they were probably out there, so I started this group, and I think it was within 2 days, I had 50 members had joined, and within a week, I had maxed out the maximum for the free account on Meetup, and so I upgraded, and we have about 70 members now, and it's only been a couple weeks. And what I did with the group is I encourage people to do this locally. So what I did with the group is I made it so personally so that everyone is is an
Moderator.
is an organizer and an event organizer. So we had I think you posted an event. We had the same week that I started we had our coffee shop meeting. Uh, the, like a few days later, somebody had a mandala making workshop that I attended. Um, Somebody started a series of remote viewing workshops. A guy who's a trained remote viewer.
Yeah.
What else do we have there?
It just really took off, didn't it,
Yeah.
Stephen? Because you had people that just needed you to create the space. They needed the invitation, didn't they?
Yeah.
And what we've been talking about on Solutionary TV is to be solutionary. First, yes, we need to take the deep dive. We need to get educated. We need to get past cognitive dissonance and deniability. And we need to be able, as I was saying to Stephen, we were having discussion prior to going on the air. You know, it looks like a reverse bell curve for a while. You were in your little happy place in your plateau before you ran into some of these late night podcasts, and some of the rabbit hole actually seemed solid or concrete or lucid to you. And we have to kind of take the deep dive all the way down into the gutter for a little while with hearing some things that we're not always thrilled with. And it's a lonely place if you have a partner and they're not interested in going there with you. If your family is saying, hey, not only do I not believe what you're saying, I don't like you talking to me about it. It makes me uncomfortable, because deniability and cognitive dissonance is a self-protection mechanism. But as we kind of go through that gutter, through that reverse bell curve, we end up discovering there actually is a huge population, a huge community that is just looking for their own micro community wherever they happen to be living. And so Stephen has brought this here to Raleigh, North Carolina, but wherever you are, folks, there are platforms to do it. They already exist on Facebook. People have their little remote tribes with YouTube. Meetup and other programs like this, other opportunities to come together, can bring you back into a space where not only can you continue to educate yourself, there is support there. There is a lot of familial sharing and bonding that takes place. And it can be a lot of fun, because disclosure can be fun, can't it, Stephen? What are your thoughts on that?
It's fun for me. Fun disclosure is my job.
Fun disclosure is definitely his job. So let's talk a little bit more about the art and where you see this going long term in terms of Sphere Being Alliance and maybe working with others in the disclosure community. Because as you mentioned, you're doing some things with Joy. I see this as an opportunity to bring the art and the entertainment in a way that's more palatable to the masses.
Yeah, well, as soon as I started doing this, I had all kinds of people contacting me about personal experiences, and they're really neat to hear. And the way I see it, I'm not my job is not to vet out all those people, but to take them seriously and make artwork based on people's experiences. So I do take some private commissions like that. I have some people who are claiming to be other whistleblowers, and and like I said, I have no way to vet them out personally, but it's really cool to be part of that process
For
too.
sure, for sure. And being someone that people trust to be able to interpret, because it's really,
Right.
it's an intuitive artistic process, isn't it, Stephen?
There is definitely an intuitive aspect of it, and I do think I don't I have that intuition that I use as an aid. I don't rely on the intuition. It's very important to me that each person is 100% satisfied with with what I put down on paper or pixel as their experience,
Gotcha.
as,
Yeah.
as close to as possible.
Well, I think that you're doing a phenomenal job with it. That's obviously true. And I would love to take the conversation as you have demonstrated. Disclosure matters to you.
hmm
Obviously, disclosure needs to lead to a change, a permanent change that is sustainable, that is regenerative, that is more freeing for society. How would you like to see your art make a difference in a long-term way towards that disclosure? Do you have your own personal vision that you're kind of vetting for yourself at this point?
I very much do, and I think the free energy aspect of this is a big one. Um, um, the idea that there is a secret space program. They've been using these technologies to get to other places on other other stars, other planets,
Mm-hmm.
and that that we have access to anti-gravity technologies
Mm-hmm.
and free energy that could solve so many problems here on Earth for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of us. And I think once when we make these questions, when we make these stories fun, people start asking questions about them, and then when they want to know the nuts and bolts about it.
Mm-hmm.
How does this how did this craft work and that one, and how did these beings get from point A to point B? And I feel that I feel that there's got to be a point where enough people demand that technology and
Mm-hmm.
that we stop burning fossil fuels.
Exactly. And what better way to show them that that is an option than by bringing it right into a full visual, a schematic, the architectural rendering, showing them not only what it looks like from a visual place, but helping them to anchor. These are some things that are not so far off from what they've seen in sci-fi or that they've read in popular scientific magazines, that they have not even heard that Tesla even tampered with. I mean, we
Right.
know that there's been so much suppressed technology. There have been many, many patents that have been kind of gobbled up by private corporations and enterprise, and even some of the lesser known aspects of our governments that, take it and run with it, or they'll sabotage whatever the personal entrepreneur, innovator, inventor happens to be if they are not compliant. So
Hmm.
to get the masses excited about it, we need it to be the puppy dog sale. We need to paint the picture and put it in front of them and go, this is real. This is tangible. Can
Right.
can you envision it too?
Yeah. What if we could interview other beings and ask them about healing technologies and
Right.
cures for diseases and all our other problems?
That's the hopefulness of Solutionary TV. And I'm going to put the number out there again, 919-518-9773. Any of you that have questions for Stephen, questions about what it is to go to these conferences and be with these contactees, with some of these now almost infamous contactees, because there have been platforms like Gaia TV and Cosmic Disclosure and these conferences and YouTube that have put these individuals in front of you to the point that they become someone you feel familiar with, someone that you feel that you know. And then you go from that place of it being kind of a query of, this sounds like there might be some continuity to it. I'm starting to trust this individual. And the next step is, can I start to build a narrative around this that can impact my life and change the way that I see my life going forward? And then we have hope. As soon as we have vision and we have hope, we can start moving into some of the solutions. So that's where we are with this, really, Stephen, is putting enough entertainment, enough creative, quality art out there, telling a story with these comics and some of these upcoming films and these ongoing written works, so that others can take that imagination and redream a new future with us, and not one that has been as exploitive, dead end, and manipulative as the ones that we've been in. So, where would you like to take our audience in terms of your personal journey with disclosure? How do you keep your own personal journey and your experience with disclosure going while you're also commissioned doing the kind of work that you're doing?
Yeah.
Tell us about your deep dives. Where do you spend that creative time?
Yeah. So while I'm luckily I have to listen to things while I work. It's kind of an integral part of my process. I kind of have severe ADD, and I the way I keep myself in my seat is by listening to spoken material. So it really allows me to dive deep in this material as I'm working on a page about Corey's experience and ET things and secret space program. I'm also listening to a program about QAnon or whatever thing out there, and I'm very closely following many content creators on YouTube and other platforms.
So that is a full-time job in
Hmm.
addition to a full-time job. And
Right.
that's kind of what we take upon ourselves, isn't it? Now, I know we've got
Uh-huh.
another caller in the queue. All right, welcome to Solutionary TV. This is Dr. Tatiana and Stephen Cefalo. Tell us your name.
Oh, hi. My name is Marco.
Hey, Marco, thanks for joining us tonight.
You're part of the Raleigh group, right?
Yes, I am.
Welcome, Marco. It's good to
Yeah.
have a fan of the group, and I'm looking forward to meeting you personally. Do you have a question for myself or for Stephen?
Actually, I'd like both of your perspectives. I've heard some others, like Dr. Greer has mentioned that there
Mhm.
are no bad ETs, whereas Corey Good and David Wilcock kind of paint a more binary picture where there are some nefarious groups out there,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like it's a matter of perspective where we might interpret some of the groups to be bad ETs, whereas from their perspective, they're just doing what they feel is right. So I'd like to um, see how you guys feel about that, or how you guys interpret that.
Marco, let me touch on that real quick, and then I really do want to hear what Stephen has to say. I'm a lifelong experiencer with what we would consider to be the 95% invisible universe. Quantum physics has really stepped up in its understanding of what the measurable universe is. And out of 100% of that measurable universe, only 4.7% is what we consider to be real matter and what humans can perceive through their visual acuity, through, our eyes, our cones and rods. And within that space, we have all of this interdimensionality, and we have these bandwidths within those dimensions or densities. And so to make a statement that there are no bad extraterrestrials is to make the statement that on this gradient of um, intention that all human life has, and then our space brothers and sisters, beings that are incarnate, discarnate, that are in this dimension and out of this dimension, it would be naive, in my opinion and in my experience, to assume that their intentions aren't something you would consider quote unquote bad. Bad's not a very descriptive term, but we have free will. This is a free will universe. And there are human beings that would misuse my time and my energy, my money, my body, if I allowed them. And it is my experience and also my belief that there are beings that are in other physical form or in non-physical form that would equally use or misuse my energy, my body, my intentions based on free will. So I've listened to a lot of things that Dr. Greer has said. I think he is brilliant. I think he's courageous and he's done phenomenal work. But I would challenge that and bring it back to the place of, as I perceive someone and their free will being infringed on me, I do not feel coherent or in alignment with what they're wanting, and I may use the term bad. Your attitude on that, is subjective, but I wouldn't align with that view. How about you, Stephen?
Right. Well, I guess the part of Stephen Greer's view that I think I can resonate with is the idea that I have trouble saying uh, there's this bad race, like this race of aliens or ETs
Like the
is
Dracos are
is
often
yeah
characterized.
So
Yeah.
I guess I have a problem with believing personally that there could be uh, a whole race of beings that's just negative.
Mm-hmm.
They might have characteristics or tendencies that we don't understand, or vibrations that we don't understand. So I do have a problem with that. I don't think it's just got to be a lot more nuance than that, because I'm a living being, and I've been living around living beings all my life, and they're very nuanced. Sometimes I think people are great. Sometimes think people are awful. It just got to be like that with everybody. And by the same token, I would say that the all aliens are, and I know that's a bad word, alien. All ETs are demons. It's just absurd,
Mm-hmm.
because really, if you have a view of anything, I mean, nobody can even begin to comprehend. But if you even start to try how big the universe is, are we really that lucky? Are we the only nice guys in the universe? I seriously doubt it.
Well, and if you look at the conditions of the earth and you were viewing that from an objective, above earth standpoint, you would not necessarily see a highly evolved, highly civilized, and humane society, would you? So, Marco, I think that you had a great question, and you probably have your own opinion on that, and we're open to your opinion as well.
Well, I agree with pretty much everything both of y'all said there. And also, it's like on Earth here, just among humans, like there's good people and there's bad people, and you can't say that any one race is all bad or any one religion is all good, or either way. There's good and bad in all groups and all over the earth.
Yes. Yeah.
Even among the animal kingdom, there I might meet I think my dogs are good, but the dog that's attacking my neighbor might not be so good, but the dog is just doing what he feels he needs to do to like defend his owner or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Is a lion bad? A lion would probably eat me.
Well, there's so much to cause and effect. And Marco, I don't know if you saw last Monday's interview, but we had Joanne Richards, who was another speaker at Dimensions and Disclosure. And it was the second time I had the honor of interviewing her. But she is the wife of a former secret space program major. And she has an amazing story. It's a legacy of his family and his father being involved in the secret space program. And they were very, very familially close with a group of dragons that looked just like velociraptors. And this is right out of something that someone would say is complete and total sci-fi, but they are ferocious and they are carnivorous. And they would eat the same way that you would assume they would right out of Jurassic Park. But apparently, and according to her intel, they have a very high civilized rapport with human beings and with other sentient life. They are involved in music and art and family culture and tradition. And so we take a lot of things for granted sometimes. I know that we would look very uncivilized to a great number of beings. And I've been told that same thing. And I'm sure you have too, Stephen.
Sure.
Yeah.
I remember her saying that that group of reptilians also enjoyed chocolate and
and the opera
manicures.
Don't forget, yeah, big hair. Can you imagine them covered like Mr. T with gold necklaces and listening to opera? It all sounds very comical, but so does a lot of the stories that we take for granted and a lot of the religious beliefs that we hold as, personal tenets to our dogma. So great question, Marco. Thank you so much for calling in. We really appreciate it.
All right, thanks. I look forward to seeing y'all at some of the meetups.
Absolutely.
Right, me too.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that, because having Marco call reminds me what we're all looking for. While we are moving away from some of the beliefs that the world is just this is what it is. I mean, a lot of people have accepted, well, this is just the way it is. It's not going to get any better. There are so many that are waking up, that are hearing the call, that are getting dissatisfied and going through a little bit of righteous indignation and saying, no, it's got to get better than this. Where do I find people that are hopeful that I can make different choices with and start to build micro community? What do you recommend for those that are looking for community? You'd went ahead and created a meetup, but what really kindled that starting point to say, if I can't find it, I'm going to create it?
Well, I'm naturally a very introverted person, so I'm not. I don't tend to be the kind of person that just kind of walks out my door and talks to strangers. Um, but I'm really good at using the social media for finding friends. Maybe some of you can go out and just start picking up conversations about these topics with people. But I found that meetup was a good choice because people could search according to topics that they were already interested in. I went to the first thing I did before meetup is I went to a local expo. It was a Mind Body Spirit expo in Raleigh, and I wore my Dimensions of Disclosure t-shirt. So that was a way to attract some
Subtle
people.
advertising.
and people did. People said, "Aha! I didn't think I was going to see that." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to start a meetup group, and you're the first person I'm going to invite."
See, you really invoked your tribe, didn't you?
Yeah.
So let's talk about what can be created when we actually start building these communities. There was for Corey Good, just to use an example, a need to be voluntarily involved in disclosure. And I think allowing some of this truth to flow so that change could be made. I mean, it was clear that there was this burning desire to be involved in disclosure and creating a safe place in a community. And David Wilcock, of course, was there, and many others that gave a platform, and then Gaia, came around that and created an entire show. And now we have a following, probably in the hundreds of thousands, if not in the tens of millions. I don't know what the numbers are, but they're profound.
And
They're
it's happened
profound.
so fast.
It did.
I mean, most of us only started hearing about this stuff in about around 2016.
That's right.
Most people.
I think I heard Corey's first interview,
Mhm.
which was a completely different interview than what he does now, because so much
Yeah.
has developed in his ability to feel comfortable publicly
Uh-huh.
speaking, right?
Yeah.
But you watched that evolution, you perceived it. Did you ever see yourself being involved in this enormous community in the tens of millions, and part of this following, and even being an advocate and a visionary supporter of it at this level?
Yeah, I think that I put a great deal of energy into that idea of being involved.
Okay. Law of
on this
attraction, good
level, yeah.
stuff.
Was I certain I was going to work? No, but I'm delighted that it did.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, I think that everybody can get involved. There's so many people who just who had something to offer and came to Corey and Roger. I think there's so many people now. Maybe it's harder to get through those everyone. But
Mhm.
if you got something, if you've got a talent, please get out there and share it with us.
Absolutely. It may seem like there is a rise in awareness, and there is. And it may seem like there is a lot of individuals getting behind a camera. And, maybe it's even their cell phone, and they're sitting it up against a computer, and they're doing a YouTube channel. But there is a need for that. There is a ravenous appetite right now for those that are putting out good intel. And just as, Stephen just shared, just because he's involved in this community with Sphere Being Alliance doesn't mean that he's not following other people's YouTube and their Facebook platforms or any of the other alternative media sharing that's taking place. A lot of you are following QAnon. A lot of you are paying attention to some of the data drops that are going on and the intel around the 51,500 indictments and want to know what's taking place. Maybe you're paying attention to Michael Bradbury and MRM BB333 and all of the geoengineering potential that's taking place with these crazy geological and cosmic events that are taking place all over the world. We need more platforms for microcosmic communities. So if you have a voice, if you have a talent, if you're okay getting behind a camera, as you can see, Stephen and I probably didn't start off thinking that this was going to be something we would end up doing, but if it empowers the masses, it's a gift to be part of this purpose. Wouldn't you say, Stephen?
Yes, and please start conferences out here on the East Coast, in the Midwest. All the conferences can't be out in California.
All right,
and
tell them what idea we
Colorado.
have.
Yes, well, you that's a giveaway, I guess. But yeah, we Tatiana and I are actually brainstorming about starting our own conference out here in this part of the country.
Exactly. Exactly. So the West Coast has a tendency to lead, and it's always going to be on the edge of alternative thinking and alternative living. And I am a West Coast girl. I'm from Los Angeles, and so this is very common to me. And Los Angeles by way of Colorado, which is where so many of these disclosure agents that I am supporting of, and of course that Stephen is affiliated with. But the East Coast is hungry for change. And if you're here on the East Coast and you would like to see more of this, we're in the Southeast. And the South, I think, is even more hungry and in need of some change agents. So we are looking to bring a disclosure conference here. We'd like to bring some of the big, but more known headliners, but also so many that are contributing amazing content. Some of you are familiar with Bridget Nielsen. She's been on the show. Having Joanne Richards come on out and be part of it. Adam Riva with Dauntless Dialogue did some phenomenal work recently on our show and is up in New York. And between some of the discussions that we've had between Stephen and I, we'd love your feedback. If it would make a difference for you, it makes a difference for us. Having just come from Mount Shasta and being with the From Venus with Love, and I'm talking like those that have been part of this disclosure and the secret science and technology that are some of the early forerunners were there. It was amazing touching base with those that have known about what's been going on with our Navy and our secret space programs for so long, and those that have brought amazing technologies forward that just ended up being quashed or patented and tucked away.
Mhm.
And then, coming from the Dimensions of Disclosure conference, when you really get to have a community at that level, you start to build a whole new sense of, I think, yourself and where you want to drive your passions. Wouldn't you say, Stephen?
Yes.
It's pretty personal. It's
Uh-huh.
invoking, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I would welcome that. And I hope that you would be also welcoming the feedback about who would you like to see at these conferences? Who would make a difference for you? And what would make that feel like something that was worth devoting an entire weekend to coming and listening to speakers?
Mhm.
Yeah. So tell our micro community what's next for Disclosure Now, Full Disclosure Now Raleigh. I'm going to get this down to an art form.
Mhm.
What's coming up for our group, and how can others be building really specific community directed disclosure gatherings in their own micro community if they were to create
Yeah.
them?
Okay. And I'm just going to give you my personal opinion about it, but I know that there are people who start meetup groups, and this is fine. They might be practitioners or something, and they use it as a way to build a clientele. But the way that I personally decided to build my meetup group, and also, by the way, Facebook groups are not that Facebook needs my endorsement, but
They're
I'm not
doing
sure.
pretty well.
Right. But the way that the way that I run my groups is more as of a round table where people can bring everyone can bring something to it. I don't want to be the leader. I'm not the boss. I'm just starting this thing and getting people talking. We all met at a coffee shop, and we just had such a good time. We were all fast friends, and what do we have coming up? We have crazy ideas, and we'll just try. I think we're going to do a synchronicity walk, where you go out in the city and you kind of let synchronicity lead you from here to there,
Hmm.
and really, I think we don't have to necessarily wait to go to the conferences to make all our really cool disclosure friends, red pilled friends.
Yeah.
We can find them here. They're all around apparently, and they're all hungry for the same thing that we are.
I think that that's true, Stephen. I think that those that are really cued in at this point are hungry to just sometimes get into the most organic and natural conversations and just
Mhm.
know that it's a safe community to be able to broach that topic.
Right.
And some of the topics are hairy, some of them are challenging, and some of them make you sound like an outright kook because they haven't been fully grasped by the mainstream yet. But that doesn't make them irrelevant.
That's right. Yeah, I want to add to that too. I don't think that everybody necessarily needs to be what we think as being red pill. Some wonderful people I know that really don't want to hear about ETs and secret space programs and QAnon are doing the inner work, which is probably even more important.
Mhm.
Those personal disclosures.
Yes. Well, you're living by example. You're embodying it, and you're kind of a walking testimony. And remember, everything you're doing that is working on yourself, that is refining your understanding, that is pulling in your latent intuitive prowess and really making an art form and a skill set out of it shifts your resonant frequency. It makes you far more of a shifter or a way shower for others around you without having to beat down anyone with your agenda. And
Mhm.
and when you need community, create it. If you don't see it, if you haven't found it, if you're not in a position to head out to the conferences, create it where you are. I promise you that if we can find it here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and he could have 50 members in 2 hours, was it?
It was 2 days.
2 days. All right. I did a stretch, but 2 days is a pretty good turnaround. I want to just give one last chance for a caller. We're down to just 5 minutes on the hour, 919-518-9773. We are enjoying your questions tonight, and we definitely want to be engaged in this micro and ever more becoming a macro community. We had over 2,100 people that were in the queue waiting for this show to open up. And that tells us that there are many people that are looking for a safe space to get this kind of information and feel at home with it.
Mhm.
So, Stephen, what are your final thoughts on how do we handle some of the tougher topics? A lot of this is fun.
Yeah,
And a
right.
lot of this is light, and it keeps it playful, and it even welcomes sort of a childhood awe around space and a Star Trek, Star Wars kind of vision that many of us felt comfortable with. But some
Right.
of the tougher topics on disclosure, I know we only have a few minutes on the hour, but how would you welcome and beckon our listeners to consider taking some steps in that direction?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to step carefully. There's a lot of probably inadvertent misinformation
Hmm.
out there, and there's a lot of upsetting information that's pretty compelling. Um, but I think it's important to remember that inner work and that inner disclosure. Not to close yourself, as one of my friends says, "Diss that closure." Wherever closure is,
Hmm.
diss it.
Hmm.
Diss that closure inside of you, and open yourself up. And I think as these upsetting topics start to surface, we have to remember the message of tier air and of the law of one, and forgive ourselves and
Hmm.
forgive others. And there's going to be a lot of information out there that is going to be difficult to forgive.
Hmm.
So I think we have to look at all this information through that lens.
Gosh, that was so poignant and so needed to be heard, because we do know that as some of the uglier stories that are going to be demonstratable to have a tremendous amount of factual backing to them become more revealed, we have to move through the righteous indignation and the repugnancy and the hatred and recognize we don't want to become the vibration
That's
that we
right.
despise.
That's right. And there's also, I think, where this can go wrong at times is, I think, personally, I think that sometimes there's a little bit too much of a tendency to go gung ho and say, look, this is how it is, and this person is this thing, and that person is that thing, and we don't really know. We might have a good hunch. We might have intuitions, but I think that sometimes intuitions can be mistaken for, or assumptions can be mistaken for intuitions,
Hmm.
and we ought to step carefully
Hmm.
and hold our fire for a bit, and until we really are sure what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole other show and several hours worth of content, but definitely worthy to bring it to a full circle of we can have fun with disclosure and we can be very, very serious about wanting to change our world. And it's our right to do so. We have our own sovereignty. We have the right to be able to say, not here, not with me, not now, and not on this planet anymore. There has been enough of free will swinging on an opposite pendulum that has been benefiting very, very few for a very long time. And I think most of us are ready to see some changes. But to maintain a vibration of change and a resonant frequency of kindness and benevolence and progression, we need to not stay stuck in those places that disclosure could allow us to drop into for too long and literally become the vibration that we detest. And so I really appreciate that you made that point, Stephen. Do we have any final thoughts for our folks tonight on how to keep disclosure relevant, and where they can find more of your work going forward, and maybe some deadlines with which they can look forward to seeing some of this in living color and
Hmm.
able to bring it into their homes and see some of the films, etc. What's coming up?
Yeah, well, there's of course Above Majestic that's coming up. There's the all three graphic novels. I'm not certain on the deadlines of the other two uh, in the series, but the first one's going to be released Halloween, same day as Above Majestic, and share the information. I think Above Majestic is going to be very shareable. I think they're um, I don't think I think it's not, what do you call it? Not public domain, but it's
Hmm.
it's it's shareable
Right.
for anyone. Have parties, viewing parties. That's
Hmm.
one thing we're going to do with our meetup group
Hmm.
too. But share the information with people and have a good time with it and keep smiling.
Do you have a website for our folks to see more of your art?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have stevencefalo.com with a PH. It's got you'll see a lot of stuff. You'll see my old classical stuff. You'll see animations on there as well as the work I'm doing for Corey.
Awesome. Awesome. So I want to thank the universe for lining it up that you and I were meant to run into one another and be able to do this show and continue to promote bringing more of this awakening message, more of the disclosure to the South. Thank you so much, Stephen, for being here. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And I just want to thank all of you that come back week after week and have been supporting this platform of Waking Up Solutionary TV. We've been evolving and talking about all of the solutions that exist out there at every level that impacts humanity. And we've taken a deep dive into ascension, and we are absolutely giving full time towards disclosure because we recognize that this is what is going to bring humanity together. We have to bring forth the truth, and we have to be looking at solutions at the most evolutionary level. So I thank all of you for supporting it. We're doing it for you. Consider supporting Solutionary TV. Consider being a patron or a sponsor. You make it possible that we get to come back every single week. And I want to remind you that this isn't about us, it's about you, because together we are the solution.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.